morning. Welcome to Morning Rounds, Stony Brook Medicine's video series, where we engage in candid conversations with colleagues on key initiatives, institutional updates, and expert insights on critical topics. Today, we turn our attention to Schwartz Rounds, a reflective forum used in more than 900 healthcare organizations worldwide to explore the emotional and psychosocial aspects of delivering care. In this special episode, we unpack what Schwartz Rounds are, why they matter, and how they're helping strengthen compassion, connection, and resilience among our workforce. Joining us today are Dr. Sadia Abbasi and Dr. Marshall Miller, who share how Schwartz Rounds have taken shape within our own institution, what these conversations look like on the ground, the stories and themes that have sparked meaningful reflection, and how rounds are shaping our culture of compassion moving forward. So, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get started. Thank you both for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
So, first, let's talk a little bit about Schwartz Rounds in general. It's sort of a rare space where caregivers really can reflect on the emotional aspects of their work. What do you think, in your experience, makes this format resonate so much with caregivers?
I think there are several reasons that these rounds resonate. Now, these are intentionally designed to create a safe space where healthcare providers bring in their full humanity into their professional lives together, openly, and without any stress of fixing or solving anything. It's interesting that in healthcare culture, we are expected to metabolize, perhaps manage is a better word, manage our emotions privately while demonstrating competence publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these Schwartz Rounds offer a thoughtful counterbalance. They create a safe psychological pause on a system that is rightfully focused on metrics and outcome by saying that this 1 hour is just to focus on meaning. And the format is right because it's non-problem solving. It's not the lesson learned, best practices. It's about stories.
Mm-hmm.
Stories from lived experiences. And when participants hear their colleagues recognizing an emotion that resonates with them, whether it's a moral distress, grief, self-doubt, or even quiet pride, there is an immediate sense of connection that, oh, I'm not in this alone. And that shared emotional language is deeply grounding and profoundly meaningful. And these rounds resonate because they flatten the hierarchy. The people, the participants from across the disciplines come and share their stories again based on lived experiences. And for that moment, humanity takes the center stage.
Mm-hmm.
People feel seen, and I think that matters. And finally, these rounds help restore meaning and purpose in our work. These rounds do not ask people to be more resilient, cope better, be stronger. Instead, they acknowledge that the work that you're doing is heavy and weight is shared.
Yeah.
I think they resonate also because people have the opportunity to recognize the power of sharing stories. It's really amazing how different something comes across when somebody tells a personal story and kind of relates it to a topic. And there's really something about being listened to, but also being the audience and listening. And so I think that one of the things that people really take away is just how infrequently we have that opportunity in our current society, and certainly often in our current workforce. Working in the hospital, you don't get that protected time to be able to, tell a story, have somebody listen to your story, and really kind of have that dialogue that comes from, that tradition of being able to frame something in your own personal experience.
Right. You know, what you both say is so important. I think we all chose healthcare because of some personal experience that each of us had that made us want to help people in need and made us want to be in a position where we might be able to manage a case differently than what our own experience might have been in some way, whether it was ourselves or a family member or somebody else. And we kind of lose that sense of our motivation and that story because we do have to have that equanimity. We do have to have that wall, that barrier. We have to be serious and dispassionate. And that doesn't mean that those sentiments and those stories aren't deep inside us. So I think this is a really great opportunity. In fact, one of the things that we know is that studies show that there are actually reductions in psychological distress among caregivers who participate in Schwartz Rounds. Why do you think this format succeeds where maybe other traditional wellness programs do not?
Absolutely. So again, the design of the rounds is such that we are reflecting on the human experiences, right? Reflecting on the emotions related to our work. And we are not fixing the problems. Again, patients and families and our work is stressful in itself, right? But then when the staff come together in one room and they are sharing the stories based on the lived experiences in a non-hierarchical and a non-judgmental setting, there is an immediate sense of connection. Mm-hmm. People recognize themselves in each other's stories. And over time, it creates trust, fosters relationships, reduce isolation, as you said, and that sense that we are all in this together. And that's the true spirit of Schwartz Rounds.
That's great. I love how it gives people that opportunity to really see in others what they're experiencing themselves. And I think it's important to understand that in the human connection that you have in taking care of patients, you form tremendously close bonds with patients, with the caregivers around you, and you have very personal feelings about that. And sometimes they're really positive, they might be joy, but they can also be immense sorrow, very significant frustration. And being able to process that yourself in isolation gets challenging at times. I think hearing other people talk about that and talk about their own experience and again, particularly to do so through the power of storytelling, I think is just a really amazing way that can be really helpful, both to understand kind of where your own motivations come from, kind of be able to say, oh, I see how this person is processing that. And I identify maybe I process that similarly, or maybe I could process something differently based on that experience. And then also, to me, it just gives a really deep well to tap into, better understanding the compassion of people around us. I think just gives you a much more complete sense of what it really means to be part of the teams of people who are taking care of patients.
Right. And we really are a team. And I think that is very important that we can acknowledge that. You mentioned, Dr. Abbasi, the sort of the non-hierarchy, you flatten the hierarchy. Tell us a little bit about that, the fact that it's multidisciplinary, and how does that sort of create maybe some unexpected moments of connection in your view?
Absolutely. So again, when I say that Schwartz Rounds flatten hierarchy in a way that many other forums can't, that means that when people are sharing emotions, they are doing it in a very secure environment. And that setting of safe environment is created by the facilitators, by our leadership, by setting a tone, by setting up expectations regarding confidentiality, right, around being non-judgmental, and that helps to have the team open up. That promotes vulnerability, because when you sense that there is a safe environment, people are not judging you based on what you say, you open up, you become more vulnerable. And again, when you become more vulnerable, there is a sense of connection, because then based on the shared experiences, you're relating and resonating to others who are listening to you in the room. And over time, again, that promotes empathy. So there is a mutual understanding. And as you mentioned, over time, we create a team that is more resilient, more engaged, and more understanding of each other's challenges. And that leads to a high-functioning team that is not compassionate to one another, but also to the patients and families. And it translates into high-quality care, which is our ultimate goal as an organization.
That's right. That's right. I think being able to avoid the things that lead to burnout, including that isolation, that sense of nobody cares, that depersonalization, is helpful for the individual. But as you point out, it's also helpful for all of the care we deliver. I recall how kind of paradigm shifting it was for me to talk to one of my attendings when I was a resident, who was debating whether he should have done something different for a patient who had a bad outcome. And I thought to myself, wait, he's the attending and he's sharing this with me. This is really, it took me back, because it made me realize that he may have some of the same concerns and doubt and attachments and things that I do. And it was, it made me sort of think differently about him and also about all the other people that I work with. That's really great. We talked a little bit about this, but maybe you can elaborate. What feels different about the conversations that you have in a Schwartz Rounds that doesn't occur maybe, behind a closed door in a conference room, or, having dinner together with a colleague?
Yeah, I think that, one of it is, we've talked about this already, but we're not trying to solve an issue. The purpose of the conversation isn't to discuss a policy or come up with a new workflow. It's really to talk about the human interaction or the human effect that an experience has on people. And so I think that's a big part of what sets it, this apart from the types of conversations that often happen on the floor. They're often, how can we fix this, or what are we going to do about this? This is much more, how does it affect me? How does it affect us? And how does that change us? I also think, and this has been my experience, is that the difference of having a room full of people, some of you might not know, but you're having the same type of conversation, a very vulnerable type of conversation, really elevates it and makes it so much more meaningful in my mind. You might have, a conversation on your unit or within your group of providers that you work with all the time, or with the office setting, whoever that is. That's great. You might come up with some great solutions. You might share a lot of really intimate details. But to do that with a group of people that you might not know, people who agreed to come to Schwartz Rounds and be in the audience, or people who agreed to be on the panel and tell their stories, to me, it just is a very different type of experience. And it really has been profound in many ways to see the types of things that people share, and also just the responses that they get from the audience.
And if I may add, I think Schwartz Rounds center humanity over productivity, meaning over metrics, and connection over hierarchy. And I think that's a profound shift in our daily life at work.
Yeah. There's that old saying, not everything that can be measured is important, but not everything that is important can be measured.
Yes.
In talking about this and sort of how vulnerable one sort of can be in a Schwartz Round, if somebody's never been to one before, do you find people are reluctant to talk? Or what, if you're advising somebody who's never been, what would you say to them about the setting and what they feel comfortable sharing or what they shouldn't feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. We always set some basic ground rules, but it really, people's participation in what they're going to encounter spans a spectrum of being very involved to just a passive listener in the audience. we always have a panel of people who are going to give their own stories on the topic that we have for the day. And that kind of is the springboard for the conversation. And from that point, people in the audience can make comments or, ideas that they have about the stories that they heard. Sometimes people will spontaneously tell their own story. And so, people can come with the idea that they'll have that opportunity, but there's lots of people that I've seen come to almost every Schwartz Rounds and they sit and listen and they enjoy it. So, it really is open to anybody and everybody who wants to participate. And I think that there's lots of opportunities. And, we've had people who have come to several Schwartz Rounds and sat in the audience and never said anything. And then they approached us and said, I want to be a panelist. Wow. And so, it really is a great opportunity for people to share in that experience and to kind of, and there's other people who have used being a panelist and they've said, I'm deathly afraid of speaking in public, but this is going to be this is a good forum for me to try to conquer that. Right. And so, it's a very safe environment, very supportive environment, and really an open environment whoever wants to participate.
I'm hoping that you can maybe share a story or a theme that maybe sparked some meaningful reflections during some of the Schwartz Rounds that really stand out in your minds.
I can think of one. We extended our Schwartz Rounds to leadership as well. And during our first leadership Schwartz Rounds, our CNO shared an experience taking care of a young patient who was terminally ill, and she was a staff nurse at that time. And the patient never witnessed a snowfall. It happened to be winter, and it was expected to snow that night, that evening that she was taking care of her. And the patient made a wish that she would like to see snowfall before dying. And she made her wish come true. And now she's reflecting years later, right? So for me and for everyone in the room, it was an important takeaway that our care is not just confined to clinical care. We must consider patients as humans. Mm-hmm. And when you extend a kind gesture, a compassionate gesture, no matter how small it is, it can create a big difference in your patient and family's life, and it can give you immense, deep satisfaction, which you can reflect later on after years, like Carolyn did.
Right. That's a wonderful story.
I remember one in particular. We had one Schwartz Rounds where the theme was unsung heroes, and we tried to get panelists who were maybe not on the front line or maybe not people you would think of as integral to the day-to-day care. And so there was one story that was told by somebody from facilities. And he shared this story about, they were working on a project in the pediatric oncology floor. And there was a patient who was going to be ringing the bell to complete the therapy for the day. And he made it a point to get all of his crew to come to that ringing the bell ceremony. And all of these guys who are normally, working in the facilities and doing everything behind the scenes and a lot of kind of rough and heavy work in the construction side got to see, what the purpose of what they do day to day really is for. And he described how some of these people were tearing up just being at that. And so that type of a story was just, it obviously stuck with me, but it's the type of thing that comes up pretty frequently in Schwartz Rounds. And those are just lovely experiences of what it really means to be part of the healthcare team and to take care of patients.
Those are great reflections. Thank you both very much. I guess last question. Where do you see Schwartz Rounds going from here? Do you see us, apart from continuing it, because it sounds like it's very valuable, do you see it changing its format, expanding, anything that you see different in the future?
Absolutely. We started Schwartz Rounds in the Department of Pediatrics, and then they extended to Department of Medicine. And now the goal will be to integrate this program fully across the roles, departments, and even at health system level. The goal for the program is not to sustain staff engagement, but also to model how a busy, fast-paced academic medical center can embed reflection, connection, and humanity in their daily work life, where we are ensuring a secure space to every staff member where they are welcome to come, reflect, share, and be heard.
One of the real powers of Schwartz Rounds is when you bring together more people from different parts of the hospital, different parts of the care team. And I think one of our major goals is to really emphasize inclusion in trainees, especially being here at the university hospital, and trying to really promote as much participation as possible from residents, fellows, nursing students, PA students, medical students. Partly to your story, when you hear people that you look up to tell these stories, it really leaves a powerful, impression on you. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. If you're a medical student or a resident and you have a story to tell, that can be equally powerful to the people who are there, as your mentor or as the person supervising you. So I think that's another area that we really want to focus to really make sure we try to advertise this as much as possible and really get as much participation as we can from the trainees within the system.
That's great. I think I'll just restate what you said so eloquently, and I'm not going to say it as well, but, for us to be the kind of academic health system that not only provides excellent care, but makes sure that all of the people who provide that care feel safe, feel supported, can reflect, and can really embrace their humanity as they deliver care. I think that's the key to making sure that the people who deliver that care and the people who provide the support for all of our caregivers at Stony Brook Medicine feel the support that they need to be able to be successful. So that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much to our guests for sharing their insights into the importance and impact of Schwartz Rounds. These conversations remind us that compassion isn't just something we offer our patients, it's something we cultivate within our teams and ourselves. We look forward to continuing this meaningful work as Schwartz Rounds grow and strengthen the culture of care at Stony Brook Medicine. And to all members of the Stony Brook Medicine community, thank you for your continued dedication to discovery, education, and the highest quality patient care. Until next time, keep the coffee brewing and innovation flowing at Stony Brook Medicine.